has
Thank you.
expired. I thank the member and call the member for Tangney.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and I rise to speak on the Social Services Legislation Amendment, Cashless Debit Card Trial Expansion Bill 2018. And isn't it interesting when we hear all of these reasons why this bill shouldn't be passed, but those members opposite from the Labor Party are happy to have the trial, or indeed supported the trial, in majority Indigenous communities, but not in these white communities, where this bill seeks to implement the trial of the cashless debit card in the Bundaberg and Hervey Bay area in Queensland, the fourth trial location for this very important program, where people under 36 years of age and accessing Newstart Youth Allowance Job Seeker and the parenting payment will receive the card. This is about 6,700 people. The cashless debit or healthy welfare card is about making lives better. I'm in this place to empower people to take control of their lives and for the government, where it needs to co-invest in their future, to help hard-working Australians reach their full potential, to help aspirational Australians reach their potential. Helping these Australians is my focus when we look at our social policy and welfare system. I remind the members opposite that the cashless debit card doesn't impact on a person's eligibility to access welfare. It doesn't change the amount of Centrelink a person receives. It simply means that they can't use all of their cash to buy alcohol, drugs or gamble, or to withdraw cash, because the card operates and looks like a normal bank card. In our communities, the lazy application of cash as welfare isn't working. In some cases, it's making lives worse. But the cashless debit card is actually making lives better, and the strong independent evaluation results from the current trial communities is telling us just how important this card is. The final independent evaluation of the debit card trial includes results from the first two trial communities, Ceduna in South Australia and East Kimberley in Western Australia in my state. The cashless debit card has a considerable positive impact for the people participating in the trial. 41% reported drinking alcohol less frequently. People are now seeking medical treatment for the conditions that were previously masked by the effects of alcohol. 48% reported using illegal drugs less often. 48% reported gambling less. 40% of participants who have caring responsibility reported they had been better able to care for their children. Better able to care for their children. 39% of participants with caring responsibilities reported they had become more involved in their children's homework and schooling when compared to before the trial. 45% have been better able to save more money. This card is not a silver bullet, that is certainly true. We know and acknowledge that. But it's an important tool in the fight against alcohol and drug abuse and the violence and crime that comes with that. This careful and independent evaluation tells us the cashless debit card is absolutely making lives better. And I've seen this firsthand when I visited Kununurra and Wyndham in WA's north. I personally met with many people who supported the card, and I met with those that don't. The number of pickups made by the Kununurra Community Patrol Service for alcohol was lower. Admissions to the Wyndham Sobering Up Unit in September were lower. Ambulance alcohol-related call-outs were down. And sales at the Wyndham bottle shop, the only bottle shop in Wyndham, dropped. I visited the Wyndham supermarket and I was told that because of economic conditions, sales across the store had dropped. But since the implementation of this card, the sales had remained at the same levels despite the drop in economic conditions for baby products. I met with community leaders who helped me to get to the nuts and bolts of this policy. I sat with the mums at the Wyndham Early Learning Activity Centre. I heard those Indigenous mothers talk about their aspiration for their children and the benefit that this card was having in their community. I met with the Chamber of Commerce and a number of health and cultural organisations. I met with the police at Kununurra and heard the issues they have to deal with day and night, and was so pleased. And I was pleased to hear that alcohol-fuelled call-outs were down. But I also spent a 12-hour shift with the St John Ambulance. The shift went from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. and we were responding to calls. And while I can't share with you, because of confidentiality reasons, the precise nature of those calls, every one of them on that overnight shift was related to alcohol. The conditions in which the individuals we visited to provide support and to meet their medical needs were shameful. They were terrible conditions. The issue of alcoholisation in those communities has not been addressed by the mere fact of giving easy money to individuals, but it is starting to be fixed under this card, but this card alone won't do it. When you've got those ambulance volunteers at St John's Ambulance telling you just how important this card is in dealing with alcohol illness and consequences of the alcohol-fuelled violence every night, you have to take their word for it. And so I'm the government's chair of our Social Policy Committee. You can read reports and you can talk to peak bodies, but to go and spend 3 days in these communities and see how lives are actually changing for the better makes you a very strong advocate for what we're trying to achieve here. Now, expanding the cashless debit card trial to Bundaberg and the Hervey Bay area will build on the positive evidence-based findings that we've had already. Bundaberg and Hervey Bay is an opportunity to test the card's effectiveness under new parameters in an area with a significantly lower proportion of Indigenous participants and on a larger scale when compared to the current communities covered under the trial. There is concern that this card targets the majority Indigenous communities. That's what I was told when I was in the East Kimberley, that some people called this the white card. It's the white fella's card restricting the Indigenous individuals' way they can spend their money. So they couldn't just go to the bottle shop. This was paternalistic. Yeah, I'm happy to accept that. But one of the things that was said to me by the Indigenous leaders in the East Kimberley was just how they wanted this card to be seen not as a tool of dealing with Indigenous issues, but they wanted this card seen as dealing with the issues at hand of alcohol in their communities, of drugs and gambling in their communities. And the issues of alcohol, drugs and gambling are not racist. They don't care if someone's Indigenous or not. They don't care if they're white or black. And that's why it's very interesting that this trial, which is opposed by the Labor Party, is opposed. Why are they opposing the extension of this card to Bundaberg and Hervey Bay, where it's a majority urban and majority non-Indigenous population? It's something that I just can't understand. I hope these trials in these new communities will dispel this perception. It's actually very important and very respectful to those Indigenous leaders in the existing trial sites that we actually do this new trial in Bundaberg and Hervey Bay. This area has been chosen carefully to address social problems that were identified during the extensive consultations in the community there. Between May and December 2017, there were 188 meetings about the cashless debit card trial with a broad range of stakeholders, including the community sector, service providers, community members and all levels of government. It's an area of high youth unemployment and intergenerational welfare dependence, as well as the high use of alcohol, drugs and gambling, are some of the big issues this community is facing. Wide Bay region has one of the highest rates of youth unemployment in Queensland. Data from March 2008 shows youth unemployment in the region is around 28.7%, which is an increase of 4% since March 2017. You can't get a job if you're bombed out of your brain on drugs, and you can't get a job if you're drunk. You certainly can't keep one as well. For all of those who are aged under 30 on welfare today, 90% had a parent who was on welfare during the past 15 years. Consultations also revealed significant problems with alcohol and drugs and gambling among young families. Drug use data from the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare shows that both Bundaberg and the Fraser Coast have an estimated usage rate of 15.7% higher than the national average. If there is a place where this card needs to be trialled, it is this location. Queensland health data indicated 1,547 incidents of care for alcohol and other drugs treatment in 2015-16. According to the National Drug Strategy Household Survey, people who are unemployed are 2.4 times more likely to use drugs such as ice and other amphetamines than those who are employed. Trialling the cashless debit card in the Bundaberg and Hervey Bay area will be an important investment by individuals and government to stabilise the lives of these young people in the communities by limiting their spending on alcohol, drugs and gambling, and helping to improve their chances of finding a job, keeping that job, or successfully completing education or training. A stable home environment during those early formative years is an imperative for positive lifelong outcomes. Setting the age limit at 36 means the government in this trial location can work with young people, their families and their children who are receiving welfare payments. Complementing the card in this trial location will be a further investment in community services of $1 million. And that's very important, and we learnt that in Kununurra and East Kimberley. But the card alone doesn't work by itself. You need those wraparound services that the member for Macarthur was talking about, but you can have both. You can have those additional wraparound services, you can have the card. Are we trialling just the card? No, we're not trialling just the card. We are trialling the card and those services to see if they're sufficient. Already there are a significant number of services in place in this region, including 70 federally funded services in Bundaberg, Hervey Bay area, which include drug and alcohol services, financial capability services, employment, family and children programs. At a technical level, this bill also amends the list of restricted goods to include cash-like products. There's always been the intention that participants should not be able to purchase cash-like products such as gift cards, vouchers, money orders, digital currencies, which could be used to purchase alcohol and gambling products. This was one of the issues identified in earlier trials and one of the issues that I identified when I visited Kununurra and Wyndham. The Bundaberg and Hervey Bay area is an opportunity for the government to test the card's flexibility as a tool to support people in urban locations and to help address the problems identified during the community consultations. I've updated the House on my own experience and where I've seen the intersection of welfare and drugs from my own family. I don't believe for a second that the life, you can call it, that being lived by so many job seekers with drug and alcohol dependence is one they choose to live. The cashless debit card is making lives better in the trial communities. We have an obligation to extend these trials to a non-Indigenous population, more urban-like environment to continue to trial the success of this card. I commend the work of the Minister for Social Services and the Minister for Human Services. I commend the work of the Attorney-General and the Minister for Citizenship and Multicultural Affairs, who previously held ministerial roles in this area and championed this trial significantly. The extension of the cashless debit card has my full support. The extension of this trial to this location has my full support. I have said many times in the past, and I will say it again, working age welfare should not be compensation for where someone has found themselves in life. Working age welfare must and always should be an investment in where they can go. That's what it must be, Deputy Speaker, an investment. And if you are investing in something, you need to make sure that investment is getting the outcome that you desire. And the outcome that we desire is to have less people on drugs, less people on alcohol, less people on gambling and wasting their money in that way, and more people in work being exactly what they are, what I am, an aspirational Australian wanting to apply my effort to get ahead. And because the Labor Party see the lazy application of cash in our welfare system as their only solution, can I tell them the lazy application of cash is not working, but the cashless debit card is, and the Labor Party should get on board and make sure that we can work together to improve the lives of people in our community and to make sure that our welfare system does exactly what it should do, and that is to make lives better.
I thank the member and call the